Welcome to Inspiring Insurance. Our goal is to provide value to the insurance industry through real-life experiences from insurance professionals who have walked the walk. You can expect to hear story sharing, top tips, and practical advice to help you grow and succeed in your career. We hope you enjoy this episode's guest. Welcome back to Inspiring Insurance, episode number 22. This week we are back in Brisbane. I am joined by Jodie Geraghty from Willis Towers Watson. How are you doing today, Jodie?
Hi, Nathan. Thank you for having me. I'm pretty good. I'm escaping the heat in the lovely aircon, so can't complain.
36 degrees outside. It's a hot one. Well, thank you for joining me. Why don't you kick us off? We're trying to change the narrative here around people falling into insurance. So my question for you is, what made you choose insurance as a career?
I love that you said what made you choose, because yes, a lot of people say they fall into insurance. I'd like to think I both fell and chose insurance. So as a child, I grew up on a farm in central Queensland, and my love of life was animals, unsurprisingly. And all I ever wanted to be was a veterinarian. And so that's what I planned through school. I went to uni, I was studying veterinary science, but partway through my degree, my dad became very ill. His future was unknown. And so at that time, I made the decision to come home. If you've ever been on a farm or spoken to a farmer, farms don't run themselves. Doesn't matter if you're sick, animals still, need tending to, fences still need tending to. So at that time, I went home for about a year period and helped basically out with the family farm or taking my dad to specialist appointments and whatever we kind of needed at the time. And after that period where thankfully he started improving and his health started getting back on track, I wasn't needed as much at home, which was fabulous news. And so I needed to figure out what my next steps were. I kind of left behind the veterinary science and I had no plan for my future because that's all I'd ever wanted. So I ended up moving to Rockhampton, which is where my partner was living at the time. And I thought, need to find something new for myself. But I'm not the person that could just apply for anything because I wanted it to be interesting. I wanted to at least have, an excitement about trying something. And so I was looking at lots of job advertisements, hadn't really found anything. And then my partner actually came to me one day and he said, I've got a job advertisement. You need to read this. I was like, okay. And read it, and it was for an insurance broking role. Mm-hmm. And what appealed to me about it, and back to my poor dad, he's had some tough challenges, but when I was in high school, he had a catastrophic injury and it meant that he couldn't work for an extended period of time. But through his workplace, we had salary continuance insurance. And that was critical to my family having a roof above their head and kind of getting on with most of day-to-day life. And so I'd had the experience of how insurance can really benefit a family. And I thought, when I read the role of the broker about you're kind of that middle person between the insurance company, but then also the client, I went, that's so me. Like I've got that firsthand experience of what this can do for people. And if I can help people in their most vulnerable, challenging moments, I want to do that. And so that's how I got started. I applied for the job, interviewed, and thankfully they said yes. And so I've been in the insurance broking industry ever since.
Amazing. Oh, that's so cool. I love that there's a really, really clear story and how you got there. And there's obviously an emotional connection for you to insurance as well. So I think that's really, really special. It's interesting that you came from a veterinary background into insurance, because what I see in the market is a lot of the time businesses don't look at people outside of the industry, which is not helping with that aging workforce and the continuation of people coming into the industry. So it's really good that you were given that chance 9 years ago, and you've obviously made a really great career of it, and it's only early days for you still. So it's very, very exciting.
Yeah, very far from retirement age. But I think to that point as well, Nathan, for business owners, it's worthwhile looking at what types of skills do you want within your company or within the industry. So, veterinary science, you go, that's such a different leap. However, as a veterinarian, you're very good at studying, you're very good at taking on information and complex problem solving. If you had an animal that came to you and you go, hey, you can't talk to me usual language that you expect, but I have to figure out your problem. So there are so many transferable skills, at least within obviously the veterinary science world, but there are so many other avenues where I think that that could also be the case. If you're talking lawyers or you're talking pretty much anything, to be honest, you have those transferable skills. Even if it's a communication piece, you could go find someone at Woolworths, and if they're the checkout chick, they're probably really good at talking to people because that's what they do day in, day out. So I think for business owners to be looking outside the box as well, it could just be very helpful. And I'd like to think that Willis are very pleased that they hired me 7 years ago. So yeah, I just think that's worthwhile, that there are transferable skills out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So walk me through your first, I guess, 12 months in the role of an insurance broker. Did you start in a support role? Did you move straight into broking? What did that look like?
Yeah, so I was in a support role for sure. So I started in Rockhampton, where I was living, and essentially I'd taken on a 6-month contract for someone who was going on long service leave. And they were what we'd perhaps say at your most junior level. They'd been in the role for many, many years, but they were going on long service leave, half their luck. And basically what they needed is someone to answer the phones, deal with reception. At the time, it was a lot of paper files. So, prepare the files for the next month's renewals, fill the printer, whatever it may be. And along the way, also start answering some of the really basic queries related to insurance. And for myself at the time, my mum still arranged my car insurance. So I was definitely learning. So that first 12 months was really learning the terminology, learning, what's a closing. Obviously, I knew what an invoice was, but what's a closing? What does that mean? And just a lot of the language that came with it, because we use so many acronyms that it was like a whole nother world for me. And so my first 12 months was a lot of listening. I did 6 months in Rockhampton. They said, great, we want to give you a full-time job forever. And I went, thanks, but I'm actually moving to Brisbane because my partner's moving for work. So they said, don't you worry, we have an office in Brisbane and we'd happily keep you. So I ended up transferring to Brisbane. I was with Aon at the time, and I transferred to Brisbane and spent, another period there. And so what I found most beneficial at the time is I found someone who was just willing to teach me the absolute basics, like not look at me like I was silly if I asked probably a very simple question, but I learned the basics, and I'm a note taker. So I wrote everything down. Probably in my first 12 months, I even had an index book. Like it used to be an old address book, and I'd if it was a category B, I would write in category B and I'd note take. And that was really useful for me because then I could just refer to it all the time. So my first 12 months was just listening, learning, absorbing, and doing like a lot of admin tasks that then set me up for the future to know what I was talking about.
Sure. How do you think your first 12 months compares to someone coming into a similar type role now, 9 years later? Because
sorry, go for it.
No, sorry. What I find when I speak with my clients is that you get lots of new brokers coming into the industry, and all they want to do is progress very, very, very quickly. And we find that that's a very common theme amongst people we work with, and it doesn't work. So people either want to progress too quickly and they end up saying, this is too slow for me, I don't want to stay in this career pathway, or you get people who do want to put in the time and do want to listen and learn and for the first few years. How do you think that's changed then versus now?
Yeah, I think, I was at a different company. So how they've potentially changed, I don't know necessarily. But at least from what I experienced to what I now see and do at my company and what I try and bring on for junior colleagues is that bit of both worlds. It's that communication piece of this is what you do to learn, so that when you get to the point where you're talking with clients and you have your own clients, you have the confidence and the capability to be able to do what you need to do. And that comes from that time of learning, but also letting them see the perks along the way of like, hey, you don't have to work for 6 months before I'm going to take you to a client meeting. It's like, I've got a client meeting next week. Do you want to come and tag along? You might not do anything overly exciting. You might get to come to lunch afterwards. But just giving insights, I think, to what the future could look like is how I certainly see it now. And I don't know what they do anymore. Where I had some really amazing people in my first 12 months where they were quite similar to how I run now, which is, hey, I'm going to a meeting. Do you just want to come? Don't care if you don't say anything, just come, just listen. Whereas I definitely had other people that I was aligned to that were like, kind of like, you have to earn your stripes before I'm going to take you anywhere. And so I hope at least that has shifted, and it's like, let me show you the highlights, so that you understand why you're doing that basic work to begin with.
Sure. And so your first 12 months, so lots of listening, lots of filling your A to Z with notes. What happened next?
What happened next is I actually found that I had more confidence to take on bigger challenges. And as I did those 12 months, the people that I was working with, they went, wow, like she can do it. She knows what she's doing. And if she doesn't know, she asks. I always ask questions. And so it just became a matter of, over this next 12 months, taking on more tasks, working with more people. But those people then, they'd say, I hand this to Jodie, and I just know that she's going to do it to the standard I want, probably above the standard I want, because I like it being really good. And then I just got more and more opportunities come my way. And that was through showing that I was, willing to turn up and do those basic things and listen, but then actually put that into practice, so that they went, hey, when I give something to Jodie, I'm confident in her. And that just led me to more opportunities.
Yeah, amazing. And so now in your role at Willis, so account executive.
Yes.
Yep. Can you give me a bit of a high-level overview of your role? I'd love to create a really clear picture for people who might be considering this as a pathway within insurance. What does your role look like these days?
Yeah, sure. So I am with Willis. I've been with them for about 7 years now, or coming up to 7 years. So as an account executive, I'm in our corporate teams, or one of our corporate teams, for general lines. So we're talking anything from your property insurance to your public and products liability, your travel, your marine, your personal accident, kind of anything that's not related to like financial lines, or anything that's related to workplace risk. So your workers' comp, I don't deal with that. But basically, general lines is generally everything else you can think of. So I essentially, with my role, I have my own portfolio of clients, which are, even though we're within corporate, they're probably that smaller to more mid-sized clients that I have for myself. And then I also support our account managers, our account directors on those really, really big complex clients that simply need more hands on deck to be able to get through that workload, and make sure that there's many touch points for people to be available for, because they're such large clients, they need so much input from us, I guess. And I particularly sit within, I guess, an education space. So I deal with a lot of schools, early education, and then I also have quite a love for not-for-profit companies. The feel-good space of people and organizations just doing really good things for the community, for the world, that just makes me so happy. So that's a lot of where I sit as my sort of day-to-day role.
Amazing. And what would you say the main responsibilities of your role are? So you manage your own portfolio of clients. What does that mean if we break it down?
Yeah, sure. So I guess you've got your renewal process. So that is the beginning of everything from their questionnaires, getting their information so that we can assess their information. Do they have things in place that they should have in place given their organization, before I then go to an insurer and look to get their insurance for them. So we kind of do like a risk management or a risk advice, risk overview piece for them. And then there is the actual placement role, where we're going out to the insurers, we're getting coverage for them. It's, looking for the coverage for their needs, for the best price, with the right insurer that essentially is willing to partner with them. And then we move through the rest of the year, which is anything that might come up throughout the year for them. So it could be, any of their queries related to insurance. They're always going to come up. They might do a new activity and they go, oh, am I covered? Or do I need a certificate? What do I need in order to be able to do these activities? So it might be answering their queries. But, sadly, unfortunately, claims happen. So it's also them being the person that guides them through a claim. We do have our lovely claims team, and they jump on some big, complex, chunky ones. But a lot of the time, I'm able to just do most of them myself as well.
Yeah, amazing. And at what point, so when you started in a support role, at what point did you say, I'm ready, I want my own portfolio of clients? What was the light bulb moment for you?
I don't know that was such a light bulb moment for me as such. It was more of just a gradual thing where I'd done a lot, and then I went, oh, kind of doing the role. Now can I just have this client? So it was probably more of a natural progression where I definitely love learning. And so if a client query would come in, I would say to the person that was, senior on the account, can I be the one to try and answer it first? So I would write the answer that I thought it should be back to my account manager or director, and I'd say, have I got it right? And sometimes they'd say, hey, here's some guidance. This is how we tweak it. This is what we do to improve, or this is a piece that needed, putting in that's been missed. And I did that for years. And sometimes I still do that on really weird queries that come in. And I would send it to them and I'd say, can you look at it first? I'd get the feedback, fix it if I needed to fix it, and then I'd send it out. And after doing that for quite a long time, it became a matter of, oh, yep, great email, send, great email, send. And it was kind of like, oh, I've got the knowledge. I know what I'm doing. So let's now just have the client go to you directly. Why, go through another person for it? And so it was probably more of that natural progression rather than necessarily a light bulb moment of, I want this. It was kind of like, oh, I'm doing it. Oh, I'm doing it. Okay, fabulous. I'm just going to continue doing it.
Yeah, the old rinse and repeat methodology works, eh?
That's it. I think a part of that is definitely just putting up my hand for opportunities. Like if I want something, and it could be, hey, I want to practice my responses to clients with property queries. So, making that announced to either my team or people around me so that when they get a property query, they just send it to me. It's like practice for me and fantastic for them because somebody else is having the first go. They kind of get to tick it off their to-do list a little bit. So it's just being quite open about what you want to accomplish, and then people bring the opportunities to you.
Yeah, sure. Love it. What's been your biggest obstacle throughout your broking career? Or biggest challenge you've had to overcome?
Biggest challenge. So I've always been a people pleaser, or at least I was a people pleaser. In that, for me, the idea of having to turn someone down to say, I can't do a task for you, I can't attend an event or something like that, when I didn't actually have capacity to do it, that was really hard for me to say, sorry, but I can't. Because I enjoy helping people. I don't want to say no to them. Yep. And particularly in my early years of work, people would recognize that I would do great work, and then they'd say, do you know what comes with doing good work? More work. And I'd go, oh, that's great. I'm so glad you're happy with me, but there's only so many hours in a day. That stresses me out a bit. And so that was something for me that was one of my biggest challenges initially, is actually feeling confident to say, I am at capacity, or I can't help you right now because I'm already on something, but if it's due tomorrow instead, or if you don't need it for a few days, let's talk and I might be able to do something for you. So for myself, it's been a learning curve of communicating with people, to go, hey, when do you actually need something due? If they send me through a task and I go, oh, I can't read their mind, I don't know when they need it done, I'll go back now instantly and I'll say thanks, so that I can figure out whether or not I can help you. Can you let me know when this is due? And so that communication piece, and you ask someone that 5 times in a row and they stop sending it to you without, a deadline, they actually just include it. They'll say, hey, Jodie, this is due in 2 weeks' time. No need to rush now. Or, hey, I need this urgently. It's for this afternoon. So that communication piece is built up over time. And now it's just a standard. My team that we have at the moment, it's just normal. Everyone just says, oh, this is when I need it. Or, do you have capacity to help me with this? It's the question that they ask first. So initially it was a lot of learning of how to communicate that, I might ask, when's the deadline, not to be a pest that I felt like I was originally being, but so I can make sure I can actually help them and do a good job of helping them. So yeah, that was really that was tough for me personally to feel like I was saying no. And sometimes that is just the case. If there's, anyone listening to this, if you're given tasks by multiple people and they say it's all urgent, it's all due this afternoon, and you go back to them and you go, hey, I've got so many deadlines this afternoon, can anything shuffle? Can anything wait until another day? And they say, no, it has to be today. Well, that's where it's your opportunity to say to these two people, well, you two get together because you've both got urgent things. They all need doing and you all want Jodie to do them, but Jodie's one person. So, often there's somebody else in a team who doesn't have a whole lot going on because we all go in ebbs and flows as to our workload. Somebody else can usually come on board and help with one of the tasks. So I think that communication piece and knowing it's actually okay to say, I've got too much on right now. I'm just at capacity. I love to help you, but I can't at this moment. 95% of the time, people are actually really understanding of that. But as the people pleaser, I didn't want to say no. So that was a big personal challenge for myself.
Sure. And I'm sure once you made that kind of, I guess it's a mindset shift, right? I'm sure that had a tangible impact on your business results and probably your work-life balance as well.
Absolutely. Because I didn't want to say no. Sometimes I'd work late hours, unnecessarily to a degree. It was always still work and it was still important, but it was like, oh, I could have been asleep. I could have been, having dinner with my husband. I could have been going to a Pilates class or something else. Yeah. So it helped definitely work-life balance. It helped the communication piece with my colleagues, but then it also just helped the work output, because if you're not doing things when you're, overtired or you've done too much, the actual work that you then produce is better itself.
For sure. Anyone that's listening to this and they are struggling with working late hours and work-life balance, Jodie's advice, top tip.
A top tip. Also a to-do list. I live by a to-do list and prioritize. I will write out like the top 3 things I need to achieve for the day, and they will have 1, 2, 3 next to them. Once I've done them, tick it off. And that just helps me stay on track as well for what, is most urgent for that day. So if something else pops up for my day, and you finally finish it and you go, okay, where was I at? I just look back at the to-do list. I'm like, oh, I'm on number 2. Here's my exact direction as to what I need to do. So prioritizing helps.
Thank you. So while we're on the topic of, I guess, advice and top tips, what is your advice for young and upcoming professionals into the industry?
Yeah, I would say be curious and ask questions, and then do what you need to help remember the information. So I mentioned my A to Z little index book, and nowadays, if I have something particularly to note, I do it on my computer, and then I can Control F things. It helps. But definitely be curious and ask questions, and be curious and ask questions, not just to remember the information, but to understand the information. People might not have all the answers. They are humans themselves. Sometimes they make mistakes. So they might not actually have the correct answers. So when you're given information, process it, like listen, process. And if it doesn't make sense to you, ask further questions. I had a lecturer in uni when I was doing the veterinary science, and he gave an hour lecture all about anatomy of different animals. And at the end of it, he said, why have none of you put your hand up and stopped me from talking this whole last hour? And, everyone in the audience was a bit stumped. We're like, well, you're the teacher. We're listening to you. And he said, everything I just told you for the last hour is incorrect. He said, you guys should have been sitting there thinking, well, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. He said, always ask questions. Yeah. And boy, do I ask questions now. is that, listen to understand, not just listen to remember. Yeah. Because the answers may not always be correct. And I had that when I first started at Willis, where I was put onto account to support someone. And to get up to speed on the account, I was just looking through their current policy documents and their renewal information for their upcoming renewal. And I noticed on their motor policy, they had a territorial limit, which was Australia only. But then in the list of vehicles they had, there were some vehicles that were in New Zealand. So I kept searching through the files, trying to find a New Zealand motor policy. I searched for ages until eventually I just thought, I don't know where else to look. And I went to the account manager and I said, can you help me? Help me find this document. There has to be a policy. There has to be something. And it turned out there was no New Zealand motor policy. In fact, we quickly got the Australian insurer to extend the policy for Australia and New Zealand. And so by me just simply not understanding what I was seeing and then asking the further questions, we potentially avoided an issue had we had a claim that needed to be lodged for a New Zealand vehicle. Yeah. And so obviously it translates to my veterinary science days, but it also happens for my insurance broking days of ask questions to understand. And if you're doing that, people are also going to be quite surprised. It's not necessarily the first approach that people will take, because they, like me, that very first lecture, they were just listening. They were just taking it in, thinking, of course you know everything. And then when you actually take the time to think about it and you raise further questions, and they're intelligent questions, they're like, oh, I haven't thought of that myself, or, oh, that's a really good point. So be curious, ask questions is definitely a top tip. And then sort of what we spoke back to, but with the opportunities piece, don't just wait for people to hand you something. You know, if you have an interest in something, if you want to go to an event, if you want to go to a client meeting, whatever the case may be, ask for it, because they can't read your mind. They don't necessarily know what you want to do and what you want to learn about. And so always ask. You know, you can always be turned down and they'll hopefully give you a reason why the answer is no, but always ask the question. And I've done that, you know, many, many times where, you know, we have team meetings and it was raised that some of our colleagues were going to be having a meeting with a client all about claim scenarios. And they're not my client, but they're in the same industry as one of my clients. And so I just said, if it's appropriate, can I come to your meeting? Because it could be really valuable for me to go to. And thankfully they said, yes, no problem. I got to sit in that meeting and got all this information of something that I could then actually utilize when I spoke to my client, whenever that sort of situation came up. And so I was just asking. And then, yeah, I got to go, which was fabulous, of course. And other times where I've done that is, you know, I had a goal that I wanted to become really effective and efficient at doing contract reviews. And so that's where, as an insurance broker, we would review the insurance clauses of the contract that our client might have with a third party, and whether or not the insurance contract aligns with the clauses within the contract that they have with that third party as to being covered, not covered, you know, should they make any amendments to their contract. And I raised it with my manager and I said, this is what I want to do. Please feed me opportunities as you get them for contract reviews. I didn't just ask my manager. I then told my 3 account managers in my team, this is what my goal is for the year. If you get them, please send them to me. I'd like to do a first attempt.
Yep.
I probably got triple the amount of opportunities that got fed to me because I let people know what I wanted. By the end of that year, I'd done so many contract reviews. I'd like to say I was pretty efficient at them. But people knew what I wanted. So then they gave me those opportunities. So if you have an interest in something, if you want to go to something, ask for it. Let your colleagues know what you want so that they can also help you on that journey to get there. Because a lot of times people are really happy to help you.
Yeah, no, I love that. Thank you for some great tips. So you also have a bit of a side, we'll call it a side hustle, but you're on the committee for the National Insurance Brokers Association. Can you give us a quick summary, I guess, on what that role looks like and what you do for NIBA?
Yeah, sure. So I am currently on what we refer to as the divisional committee. Some people in my office like to tell me it's the old person's committee. I'd like to think we're just wise and more senior, but essentially the divisional committee, there's one in each of the states, and more senior people of the different organizations around whichever state it may be, they come together on the NIBA committee. And as part of that, we are a voice feeding back into NIBA about what's going on in the market. So it may be, you know, are there particular insurers we're noticing challenges with, or is it that we've got, you know, supply issues, or pretty much anything related to insurance brokers and the challenges they might be having, or also positive stories of things where they're having. And we're feeding that back into NIBA so that can go into some of the regulatory discussions that they're having with politicians and at that sort of level. We are basically the advocates for everyone in Queensland. So information feeds to us, then we feed to the head office. The other aspect of the divisional committee is that we help, or we put on events for the insurance broking community. And that also usually includes insurers that come to those as well. So it's things for Queensland, it's like your Christmas bowls that we have, and we bring together hundreds of people to basically celebrate another year of insurance and insurance broking and getting to celebrate together for a Christmas do and catch up. Other things that we do as well as we support the Young Professionals Committee with some of their events and bringing education and social events to the community. So I originally started on the Young Professionals Committee, where their role is mostly to put on education events, put on social events, and then also run a mentoring program on behalf of NEBA. And so we help support them in their endeavours, and that's where I originally started after being in the industry for quite a few years and, you know, having also been chair of that committee and very pleasingly had a successful run as chair. I was then asked by the chair of the divisional committee if I would come onto the senior old persons committee, as I've heard it called. But it's been really valuable to meet other insurance brokers, meet insurers through that, gain knowledge, mostly gain a network is what I've really loved, and then help bring the matters of insurance brokers to the forefront of people who are then able to take that further for us. So myself personally, you know, I don't have the contacts with politicians who are going to change the game for us, but by feeding it through NEBA, we're able to have that advocacy piece on behalf of all insurance brokers.
Yeah, great. Thank you. If there's anyone that is in a broking role out there that is interested in getting involved in this, is there a way that people can make it known that they want to be part of this committee? Do they put their hand up? What does that look like?
Yeah, so look, because they're state committees, I don't know all the contacts off the top of my head, but certainly through the NEBA website, it lists out the committee members of each state, whether they're on the Young Professional Committee or whether on their divisional committee. And it essentially also lists out who's the chair. So it gives you the person to, you know, see their name on LinkedIn, go make a contact with them, message them, see if they have any openings, see if they need anyone, or to keep you in mind in future if, you know, nothing's available at the moment. So definitely an avenue where I would start is to look at that website, see which state you're in and who's the relevant person to contact, reach out to the chair of that committee and just put your expression of interest forward. They're likely to, you know, have a catch up with you and tell you more about what the committee does for that individual committee for that state. And then, you know, see if it's still of interest, see whether or not there's a role going. At the very least, keep you in mind for future if something comes up.
Amazing. Thank you. Good summary. Thank you. Well, Jodie, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and be one of our guests this week. Much appreciated. There's definitely a lot of value from this one. So much appreciated for you sharing all your tips and your thoughts. And yeah, looking forward to seeing 2026, only 6 weeks away. Crazy.
Yeah, that's it. It's going to be here before we know it. But no, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
So welcome. Thanks, Jodie.
Thanks for listening. A big thank you to our guest, and we hope you found some value from this episode's chat. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to send it to a mate and hit follow so you don't miss what's next. I'm Nathan Anning, Director and Insurance Recruiter at Impact Talent Australia. Catch you next time.